And so that's just because like we all kind of just know that. It's like, did you know that the New York Times is state-run media? And we're like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The people who know this already, it's not new. Like the people who care already know.
Yeah, those who care already knew, and those who don't know probably don't care.
It's just nice to have them confirm. Even if it was by accident in an attempt to own Donald Trump, they admit, which, like I said, we already knew, that they are a state mouthpiece. Imagine anybody saying, well, before we ran this story about Putin, we ran it through the Kremlin. That would be a headline news right now, even if it was some paper we've never heard of from Russia.
Yeah.
They would be talking about it. But in America, the paper of record says outright that they send their stories to the government for approval, and people yawn, or they just go, "Wow, that's not what they mean." That's ridiculous.
Speaking of censorship, Project Veritas is back in the news, or rather, they're not. Project Veritas revealed again another thing we already know, which is that Google censors their search results with a left-wing bias. What was really surprising about this, though, is that Project Veritas, they put this out there, and the media machine, the web media machine, acted in near lockstep to censor them. So YouTube removed it because YouTube is owned by Google. And this, by the way, is the proof that what they reported was accurate, right? Because if it were fake, they would have quote unquote debunked it. But instead, they just censored it. So YouTube pulled it down, but then Vimeo also pulled it down. I think they lost their PayPal or some other kind of payment processing. And so they basically, at the end of it, Project Veritas just said, we'll start emailing out the MP4 file. Just go on our email list and we'll start sending you the email. Because they were recording Google executives, and apparently they had like a leak sort of internal memo about quote unquote machine learning fairness to make the search results fair and equitable, and editorial policies. And I heard a rumor, and I don't know if this is true, that the person who leaked that memo was Christopher Poole. Dan, do you know who Christopher Poole is?
Of course I do, but you can tell the folks at home.
Christopher Poole is also known as Moot, the founder of 4chan, who sold 4chan off to I don't really remember who, so that he could work at Google. So if this was all just a deep cover operation so that Moot could reveal that Google was a left-wing organization, then, thanks, I guess.
Again, like news that's not news.
Yeah, news that's not news. But it is apparently news to the right that even as they're announcing that Google is censoring things, they seem to be shocked that Google is censoring reports of their censorship. Like, what did you think was going to happen?
Brian Stelter is the host of Reliable Sources on CNN, put out a tweet saying, I Googled this Project Veritas stuff and couldn't find a good article about it that was reliable. And then someone retweeted him and said, so you Googled a news story about Google censoring bad news stories about itself and didn't find anything, and this is not suspicious to you? This checks out. But also I find that more telling than that fact, he's so dumb he didn't even get. It would be like saying there's a leak about a news story saying Walmart is poisoning people. And he said, well, I called Walmart. I checked the Walmart website, and it didn't have anything.
I don't see anything in Disturber about this Holocaust.
Exactly. And apparently when journalists hear news, we all use Google. Apparently that's what journalists use too.
Well, I mean, what else would they use?
No, but I know...
Secret journalist-only search engine? Do
you get what I mean? The idea that journalists should have something more than what we have at our fingertips, because they're, capital J journalists. And then
they are the Prius class of our day.
This isn't like him saying, well, I checked with contacts here and there, and I'm digging. He just was like, well, I Googled it, and I didn't find anything. It's like, that's what makes you get a job at CNN, is you have access to search engines? Shouldn't they have at least the equivalent of JSTOR or something, but for journalists?
Right. I mean, this just shows how lax the standards are at CNN, because this guy apparently he gets is by Googling things, but some guys at CNN have training by the CIA.
True.
So what's up with that disparity? Anderson Cooper should ask for a raise for the kind of qualifications he's bringing to the table. Yeah. Speaking of media censored stories, and this one, Dan, is going to be mainly you, because you know more about this than me. But Jeffrey Epstein, who we have brought up a few times, has been rearrested. And Jeffrey Epstein was arrested for sexually abusing dozens of underage girls and trafficking them. And he had a, what do you call his plane, Dan? What do you call that?
The Lolita Express.
Yes, he had a plane which he called the Lolita Express.
And why would he call it that? Does anyone know? What is Lolita a reference to?
Lolita was a book by Vladimir Nabokov.
Some AKA a Russian pervert. The gist of it is that it is a middle-aged person, probably him in disguise. It's the protagonist is a middle-aged man who has a sexual obsession with a 12-year-old girl. And he becomes her stepfather, at which point he starts molesting her. It's from his perspective, so it's portrayed as like a love affair.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. It's much beloved by the smart set of literati, because, everyone knows that writing a novel like this is automatically very sophisticated and not disgusting at all. So he named his plane after this.
Those of you in the anime community may recognize the word lolly, which refers to, pedophilic behavior with young girls. And that is a reference to this book as well. So Jeffrey Epstein calls his plane.
It's a famously, it's a wink and a nod.
That's not a wink and a nod. I mean, that's just blinking rapidly and just vibrating.
Yeah, it would be like he called it the Pedophile Express.
Yes.
Or the Underage Girl Express.
A lot of famous people were on this Lolita Express. At least two of those people became president of the United States. One of them is president right now. The other person who was there, his wife ran for president against our current president of the United States.
The sort of R. the Donald world of MAGA country or whatever portrays this. There's two ways to portray it. One way to portray the Trump-Epstein connection is it's one of those things where, because we have no actual proof of people's motivations, you can look at it either way. So one way to look at it is that Donald Trump is deeply embedded with Jeff Epstein and is involved with his shenanigans. By shenanigans, I mean the raping of children. That he's deeply tied up in it. It's all too close to home. He can't get involved. The other side says that Donald Trump, because he's made public comments where he said that Jeff Epstein, likes women and he likes them young. One way to look at that is Donald Trump excusing it. Another way to look at Donald Trump sort of trying to bring attention to it, but he can't because of his position or whatever. I don't know. But the idea is, since both sides of politics are involved heavily in this, Clinton is deeply tied, that we know. That's obvious. He's got pictures of him on there. Unlike Trump, who now has this semi-exculpatory evidence that apparently he banned Jeff Epstein from Mar-a-Lago at some point because of this behavior. When it was, we don't know, whatever. But Clinton doesn't really have that. So, on the right, on the fringes of the right, this is being hailed as like, this is the day now. He's been arrested. He'll give up the Clintons. It's all coming crashing down. And on the left, it's been silent except for one article on Politico about the one connection between Trump and Epstein. And it ignores the 400 connections between Clinton and Epstein.
Yeah.
That are continuing and ongoing, as opposed to the Trump.
This is not Epstein's first time being arrested. He was arrested and tried before.
Yes.
Or rather, he wasn't tried before. He took a very generous plea deal.
Yes, from, at this point, the Trump administration. Or, well, someone within the Trump administration gave him a plea deal in the same way that politicians have been giving him sweet deals his whole life. No one really knows where Jeff Epstein's money comes from. He's an investor / banker of some kind. He's one of those vague Great Gatsby types who except the Gatsby mansion had 12-year-old girls at the pool parties who were not allowed to leave. So the idea that this is going to amount to anything, what's going to happen is all you need to do is Google Jeff Epstein's mugshot and you know already what's going to happen.
Yeah.
That is not the mugshot of a man who thinks that it's all over. That's the mugshot of a man that thinks, I'm going to be back on the streets by lunch. He's pretty secure in the fact that, the idea that he's going to give up the Clintons or give up Trump or give up anybody. I don't really think there's anybody for him to give up in the sense that, he's definitely more culpable than any of them would be because he's got the pedophile mansion and the island and the plane. But the idea that he has dirt on them, the reason you have dirt on these people is not so you can give them up. It's so that when they come to arrest you, you can just say their name and it all goes away. Like, he's not that level of criminal. He's not like Denzel at the end of American Gangster. He doesn't have to give everyone up because the people he has to give up are so powerful that all he has to do is make a phone call and it will be solved. He's not going to have to be like, it's so silly that people who think that that's how this works.
Oh, hold on. Let's also, the other important thing here, because that's a lot of context, why he was arrested again. So during his initial, I don't want to call it a trial, during the initial proceedings, a bulk of all the documents were sealed. His victims have been pushing for years to get them unsealed. And recently, Julie Brown from the Miami Herald has been working incredibly hard to get these things
get herself
unsealed.
Killed.
Right, to get herself killed. Mike Cernovich as well has been pushing this. But I think what also pushed it over the edge was Jeffrey Epstein's own defense attorney at the time, a man who some of you in this audience may or may not have heard of by the name of Alan M. Dershowitz, was also pushing to unseal it to dispel some of the, the vicious slander and speculation that was being spread about Jeffrey Epstein. What that really means is the vicious slander and information that was being spread about Alan Dershowitz. That Alan Dershowitz himself was on the plane and that he had also had sex with some of these girls. It's been one of those things that even Alan Dershowitz's enemies, like, they'll never say it to his face, but it's one of the things that we all know.
Yeah.
But Dershowitz apparently is hitting the nuclear option where he's like, okay, you know what? We're unsealing it then. It's like, hey, Dershowitz, you defended Epstein, didn't you? It's like, yeah. It's like, I bet you were on that plane too, right? And it's like, you know what? Unseal it. All goes out the window. And so somehow this is getting him rearrested. And a lot of people are saying you can't undo a plea deal. And that is the only thing that's giving me like misgivings about this, is that they're apparently just going back on a plea deal, which I'm pretty sure you shouldn't be able to do.
Which is why some people are conspiracizing that this is like the shoe dropping. But it's not. The shoe never drops. There's no justice. Yeah. It doesn't happen.
Yeah, much like with the Jeffrey Tucker thing, if we view this devoid of, then we're actually seeing something disturbing in another direction. So, yeah, that they're undoing a man's plea deal. If there's more to this, then we can really... We are trying to keep this podcast at a reasonable time length, even though we've been recording for about an hour and a half. So we're going to move on from the story. We have plenty of links in the show notes that you, dear listener, can read to get up to date on what happened here. One more thing. Media that's reporting this is like trying to remove Mike Cernovich from the story. Right? When talking about who's filing who filed the FOIA claim to get access to some of this stuff and who filed the suit to unseal it. They're like, someone did it, or they'll mention Mike Cernovich once so as to not give him too much credit. And speaking of journalistic malintegrity, Andy Ngo, who some of you may have heard of if you listen to the Dastardly Tom Woods show. Andy Ngo is a journalist who lives in Portland. He is a gay Asian left-wing journalist. Except he's only left-wing in normal people town. So in a country that made sense, and would be considered on the left. He believes in social safety nets, egalitarianism, gay rights, all that fun stuff. But in the city of Portland, he is a right-wing bigot because Portland is one of the most left-wing cities in one of the most left-wing states in the union, but is apparently simultaneously being hit with a rash of homophobic hate crimes. And Andy Ngo would just like to see, maybe a police report for one of these. You said you've been assaulted. Can I see the wounds? They didn't wound you.
Just asking questions model of journalism.
And the just asking questions model of journalism is like, you said you've been assaulted. Can we see maybe the security footage? So they said this was MAGA country. Is there anything I can? Nothing, huh? In our left-wing city, you said that we're filled with hate criminals. Yet where are they? In real terms, where are they? So this makes Andy Ngo an undesirable. So Andy Ngo was at an Antifa counter protest of who knows what, who cares what.
I wouldn't call it a protest.
It was something. Well, no,
that makes them sound.
No, I don't think Antifa was. No, I'm saying I think there was a protest that Antifa was disrupting. But I'm saying whatever the protest originally was, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
The point is, Andy Ngo was there recording Antifa. And they didn't like that, even though they're all wearing masks. They were like, Andy Ngo is trying to help right-wingers dox Antifa just because we're peacefully throwing Molotovs. So they kicked crap out of him, and they were throwing milkshakes at him. But apparently these are milkshakes that seem to cause like lacerations and chemical burns.
Well, I also saw him getting hit in the head.
Yes, they were attacking him. And according to the Portland police, there was quick dry cement in some of the milkshakes, because Antifa's definition